What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and today I'm looking ahead to the Bellator Champions Series London, which goes down on September 14th, 2024 in the OVO Wembley in London, England. And it is a card which has taken a few big hits over the last couple of weeks. So the biggest of which is obviously missing out on the main event. A fight which is apparently being rescheduled pretty quickly, so you would think, I'm not sure what it is, but a slight injury or something like that between Fabian Edwards and Johnny Eblen for the middleweight title. And the main event is now going to be Leah McCourt versus Sara in the featherweight division. You would assume this is going to be a number one contender bout for the belt, which will be on the line. Is it on the line, actually? I'm not sure. They'll fight the winner of Chris Cyborg versus Larissa Pacheco, you would think, coming up here very, very soon. And I think, look, if you're going to the card or if you're a fan of Bellator, I think you're probably very, very disappointed in the main event falling out. You would have been looking forward to, I'm sure, this is as one of the fights on the main card as well. But, when it's a Champions Series and you don't have a championship fight on it, I'm sure the Bellator PFL officials would have absolutely loved to have a championship fight on it or multiple championship fights on it. I think that was the aim from the start, but it's, it's not always that easy. And I still think I talked about this a few times, and I'd be very interested. We're not far away from the end of the year now. I'll be doing my end of the year reviews and things. I feel like it's almost in a learning curve at the moment with the whole PFL Bellator not relationship is the wrong word, but dynamic. Like what fights are going where, what fighters are going where, who to put on what card, what titles even still exist, or even with the Pacheco Cyborg thing. I feel like it's all coming in together now. Do I have faith in it will come together and it will be good in the end? I actually do, funnily enough, but I just don't think it's there yet. Which is grand. Like, it's grand because they have, it's only 8-9 months that this has been happening, and less even, if you want to put it in terms of the first event, and in terms of the amount of events they've done, it hasn't been that much. Like, considering the PFL season format is basically the same as it's always been, and it's been good this year as well. But it's a very new world, and I think. If we look at it this time next year, you would hope there would be a lot of adjustments being made, and it would be, kind of more joined up and more together. And as I said, I think it can be. So, with that said, I think if that fight didn't fall out, I don't think there would have been many people complaining, and it's very unfortunate. And I've said this many times before with a lot of times with Bellator, because there was one year, there was a 2022 or something, they had really bad luck, all their fights were falling out. But even with the UFC or whoever it might be, like, at the end of the day, if they try to put on a good card and then something doesn't happen, one fight falls out or three fights fall out, look, our job is to hold the promotions to account and be critical and stuff at times. So, but there's sometimes people are critical for the sake of being critical, and sometimes you have to look at it and go, geez, that's just unfortunate. I think that is without doubt the case on this one. But look, at the same time, we still have a card here, and we still have some really good, I would say, up and coming talent, but also talent that are right there ready to be close to the next in line. Obviously, the main event, which we'll talk about in a second, but Marc Diakiese is well coming over to fight Tim Wilde here. Very, very interesting. Mike Shipman's never far away in the middleweight division. But the two Irish young guys coming up, Kieran Clark and Dara Kelly, both undefeated, both with little bits of step up, I would say. We'll talk about that in a while. But there is a lot to see in all them. And then the light heavyweights, Simon Powell against Rafael Xavier, and Luke Traynor fighting against Urbonavicius. Two very interesting guys. Powell and Traynor are training partners, excuse the pun, and there's a lot, because like if you look at this card now, you mightn't, if you're unfamiliar with I suppose the Bellator European Series scene, you mightn't be massively familiar with a lot of these, but I feel like there are two or three people in 2 or 3 years who you'll be very, very familiar with. And, those are the sorts of cards that are well worth tuning into too. So let's get right into it here, and let's talk about the main event, Leah McCourt versus Sara Collins. It's a very, very interesting fight, and probably the consensus number one contender fight, if we're being honest, in that division. I know they don't have the the rankings anymore. I did enjoy the Bellator rankings, but Sara Collins has had a great time since she's come into Bellator. Obviously came in at 3-0, beat Pam Sorensen, which meant an awful lot, and then won against Sinead Kavanagh. It was a split decision. It was a close fight. Sinead fought well in that, but she got the win, over Sinead, who 1 or 2 fights before that, 3 or 4 fights before that had fought Cyborg, and in 1 or 2 fights before that had beaten Leah McCourt to earn her a shot at Cyborg. Unfortunately, she tore her ACL and wasn't able to get that, but what a win that is for Sara Collins, against the number 1, 2, or 3 contenderish in that division there of Sinead Kavanagh. So put herself at 5-0 right in the mix. And then Leah McCourt at the other side of it then, she's been in the mix for a while. I suppose if she'd won that Sinead Kavanagh fight like Sinead did, she would have been the number 1 contender after winning, 6 fights in a row before that. She'd beaten Manon Fiorot in that as well, a good few years back now, but at the same time, she headlined the card against Judith Ruiz, beat Janae Harding, beat Jessica Borga. So, lost that Sinead fight, came back, beat Diana Silva in a very good performance there. Lost to Katzengano, an exciting fight, one of those fights that you watch it and I think you gain a lot of respect for both of them. And they went in there against Sarah McMahon and beat her down and finished her in a round. So again, Leah was probably back as the number 1 contender at that stage, considering Kat had got her shot and ended up losing, considering Sinead had obviously lost to Sara Collins, but the one directly opposing her was Collins, and they make the fight, and it makes a whole lot of sense. Now, would it make more sense to keep one of them and have them fight the Cyborg? Maybe, but is Cyborg going to fight Pacheco and retire, or is she going to fight in the PFL season, or is she going to come back to Bellator? It's hard to know with Cyborg. I'd say maybe she mightn't even know herself, and she's the absolute right to make all those decisions considering what she's done in her career. So look, if you're Bellator or same situation in the UFC or anywhere else, you have to make these decisions. You have to kind of move on at some stage, and Leah hasn't fought since around this time last year, October 2023. Sara Collins hasn't fought since September 2023. So, I'm sure they're both hanging for a fight and they need it. And it's a very, very interesting fight, this one. Let's get into the X's and O's of it. Watching back the Sara Collins fight, obviously there isn't a huge amount of tape on Sara Collins at the top level. Obviously she was in there with Pam Sorensen, in there with Sinead Kavanagh. What I took from watching all of that, and I watched her. I remember even watching some of her fights over in Eternals in Australia, isn't it? Yeah, she's from Australia. I'm being very impressed with how well rounded she is, and that's the key for her. She's a very, very good wrestler when she needs to. Good kind of trips against the cage, body lock takedowns and things like that. Good in transitions. A good striker, just a good, well-rounded fighter, but someone who, against Sinead, who has done a lot with her takedown defense over the last while, didn't have as much success maybe as you would have expected a couple of years ago. And Sinead, that's credit to Sinead as well, but also if you're looking at it from Leah's point of view and you're thinking, Collins is going to come in and wrestle me, that might give you a little bit of heart as well. The striker, on the other hand, then is she the best striker in the division? No, but she's very, very good striker for a 5-0 person coming through. There's no doubt about that. Leah's striking on the other side of it then, I think it has improved vastly over the last while. She would have admitted herself a few years ago that it was a work in progress. She's been at a few different gyms. Obviously, she's been up the north where she's from. She's been down at Owen Roddy's gym and over for the last while at Molly McCann, Paddy Pimblett's gym over in Liverpool. And she seems to have made that a home now, and it's very much helped her. I think her jabbing has been looking a lot better. Her defensive striking is looking a lot better. And I would say, in a year, 18 months' time, she could look a lot different fighter as well. But this fight is happening now. And it's going to be very interesting how it plays out. The other side of Leah's game then, obviously she started out as a judoka, and I think the biggest thing Leah has on a lot of other women in this division is her size and her strength, and the fact that she's a genuine 145. You know, I've talked to her before about fighting a 135, and she says she can do it, but she doesn't really want to do it. It'll be a lot of, you know, she's often, as I said, often talked about it, but then she has the weight cut and is like, no, I'm never doing that type of thing. So I think she has that over Collins as well. Now Collins is 5'7", only an inch shorter than Leah McCourt, but I think Leah fights a taller game, and I think, you know, if I was to guess, I would say they'd be a little bit off. I think Leah will be much the bigger woman in there by the time the fight starts, and you know, that strength and that ability to, you know, get those hip tosses and get people on their back has been a massive part of Leah McCourt's career. So how will this fight figure out? Honestly, I find it hard to gauge, really. You know, when someone like Collins is so young in her career, but at the same time 34 years of age, having, you know, she was tested obviously against Sinead Kavanagh and came through that test, but it's a different sort of test against Leah. And, you know, usually early in your career, you'll pass one test but not pass all of them, if that makes sense, you know. And I would have some worries if I'm Sarah Collins about look, if it's all offensive, there's no worries. If she can keep getting her offensive wrestling and striking out there, no problem. But if she's forced to defend against Leah, if she's the one with her back against the cage and Leah is the one trying to trip her rather than her trying to trip Leah, if Leah is the one kind of landing that jab and coming forward, I think, like, Leah, if that happens to Leah, Leah has been in that position before. If that happens to Collins, has she really ever been in that position before in a fight like this? She hasn't, like. So I think that might be her biggest issue here. Having said that, you know, is her wrestling good enough to keep Leah off her and keep the fight on the feet? Well, I don't know the answer to that question, right? But let's presume both ways. If it is good enough, I think her striking will be good enough to get the job done against Leah. I think it's going to be a longer fight. I don't see like a quick knockout or anything like that, but I do think, like, she can do it. I'm not saying that she will necessarily, but I think she can do it. If she does struggle and Leah ends up taking her down, I think there's going to be big problems for her there. Now, we've seen Leah being taken down before. I imagine to get out of those, or, you know, triangle people and get up before. We've seen her being put into wars where it's striking, and she's come through that as well before. So it's a tough one because, as I said, Collins just hasn't shown us the bad parts of her game. We've only seen the good parts, if you want to put it that way. Whereas we've seen everything from Leah. Now, at the same time, who's the pick here? I think, you know, I've plenty of Irish bias here, obviously, and but maybe this is one of the heart says Leah, the head says Collins, and I think that might be it. If I'm pushed, I think I'm going to pick Sarah Collins based on the little bit of better striking and the strength in the wrestling as well. Again, could I see this being a split decision? Absolutely. I think it will be a decision. I think it'll be very close. But yeah, I'm going to go with Collins being the pick. But you know, the heart will go with the Irish as always. But yeah, look, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a very even fight and very good matchmaking. And sure, what else could you ask for? Let's talk about. I'm not 100% sure how this card is going to work out in terms of the placement and everything, but the way it is at the moment, Simone Powell and Rafael Xavier, and Luke Traynor and Urbonavicius are the two next fights listed, and they're in, as I choked at it, they're in the light heavyweight division. So let's look at both of them, I suppose. Very interesting. The two opponents, let's put it here, for Traynor and Powell, who are the two, you know, British guys coming through. And it was fun, honestly, to watch both of these guys. Let's talk about Xavier first, who's fighting Simone Powell. He's a big athlete with hard low kicks, good lead hand movement. But to me, he just doesn't throw enough. But when he does, he's such a fast counter striker, stiff jab, Power in the right hand is massive, and like he has good takedowns too. He dumps guys on the ground. Watching his last fight, he fought a good few fights in Octagon, which, as people know, is one of the premier European organizations at the moment. He beat Dan Vinny last time out, who is an awkward type of guy. Was very, very, very subtle about it. Didn't throw much, didn't do much, and bang, suddenly knocks him out. Very, very high knockout rate. 9 wins via knockout and 13 wins, 2 by submission as well. So, only 2 of his 13 fights that he's won haven't gone to decision. When he has gone to decision, though, he has lost. He's 2-6 in decision fights. So 8 of his fights have gone to decision. He's lost 6 of them, which I think does tell a story. What I was saying, I actually hadn't even seen that stat before. I said, he doesn't throw much, doesn't throw enough, needs to let the hands go a little bit more. Easy for me to say, but that read seems to come out in the stats as well. Simon Powell is not massively dissimilar. I don't think he's a guy who likes to fight on the outside, who has big power, and if he lands it, you're in trouble. But also Simon, I think, has showed in the PFL, Europe, and even before that in the Challenger Series, he's well able to wrestle as well. He can take it to ground, as a Xavier. But I feel like that Jacob Indai fight, again, like Xavier, maybe there was a little bit of, maybe he's waiting a little bit too much. Maybe he's a little bit too confident in that power, because you can't always bank on the power to win you every fight. Like, what if the fight goes to the decision? If you've banked on the knockout, you're going to be in trouble there. So this is an interesting fight for both guys. Like Simon Powell, he's only 25 years of age. Xavier is 33 years of age. He's been around for a good long time now, making his debut back in 2014, and he's had opportunities in places like, ACB and Octagon, as I said. But this is a big opportunity for him in Bellator. It's a tough one to pick, honestly. I think Simon Powell will probably be the big favorite here, but having watched tape on Xavier and looked at some of his opponents, like, I think they probably stack up against some of the guys that Simon Powell has been fighting, if we're being honest. Like, the best fighter he's fought has beaten him, and he'll need a lot of improvement from that, I think, to come back. So I'd probably lean with Powell, because I really do like him, and I've talked about him on his way up as a really good fighter, and I believe in his ability. But by no means a layup or anything in this fight, in my opinion. Then we've Luke Trainer against Laurynas Urbonavicius, or Larry, as I like to call him for short. He's a very good wrestler, this Urbonavicius. Big double leg slams, vicious ground and pound, but he's an athletic striker too, with a fast lead hand, and loves to throw the backhand after it. Watching some of his tape, fighting out of Lithuania, 14-1. The weird thing about him is, right, and I mentioned Rafael Xavier last time. He actually beat Rafael Xavier to a decision, but he made his debut back in 2016. Fought until 2019 and was 13-1. And then I'm not sure what happened. Did he retire? I was trying to look it up, but I couldn't find it anywhere. He fought in Aries, which was a big opportunity. Beat Ildemar Alcantara, who's a good fighter. And then we didn't see him for 3 years. Came back and he won a fight on the regional scene in 2022. And again, it's another year and a half since we've seen him again. And now he's getting this big opportunity against Luke Trainer. But as I said, a very, very good fighter. Luke on the other side of it then, he fought Grant Neal in his last fight, and he fought in a very different manner than how he normally does. Neal wanted to wrestle him, so he fought very carefully on the outside, a little bit like Xavier, as I mentioned the last time. Defended the shots well by getting to the cage and using his height, but he needs to jab more and use his distance better. He has brilliant front kicks up through the middle. He's also faster than he looks for a big guy. He's absolutely lightning. Good, very good straight shots down the middle. And I think they will be the key here. If he can land that jab, if he can be defensive, I think Urbonavicius is going to have a bit of a game plan to get inside on him. And the way that Trainer can kind of throw those front kicks or throw those uppercuts, I think coming in is going to be an issue for him. Now, again, I'm going to pick Trainer here, but I would not at all be surprised if one of him or Powell lost. I think the two guys that they've put him up against are very, very good guys. Again, by no means a layup whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to seeing those fights going. Like, Trainer did lose to Simeon a couple of fights ago, but he is kind of destined for the top. And, beating Sullivan Colley was a massive win for him there, then beating Grant Neal. And, this could be looked as a bit of a step down, but Urbonavicius is a very, very good fighter, so looking forward to seeing that one. Arguably the fight at night could be the main event is Marc Diakiese against Tim Wilde. I went to whack and watch a couple of Tim Wilde's fights there, because it feels like I've been watching Tim Wilde almost the whole time I've been watching MMA. Made his debut back in 2013, so not necessarily. It's Jesus, that's mad actually. The fact that I've been watching MMA for like 7 years more than Tim Wilde has been fighting. That's kind of crazy. But he's been in there, with the who's who, Bryn Primus, beating Charlie Leary, draw with Alfie Davis, beating Saul Rogers and Anthony Dizzy and Mike Hamill. Very good winner. Just watched that fight going back actually. And look, lost his last fight, no doubt about it. That'll be a tough one for him to take, but it's a massive opportunity against Marc Diakiese, and he's never, as I mentioned with the lads, he's just named out there. He's never turned down an opportunity like this. And you look at Tim Wilde, and sometimes a guy like that who's been around for a very long time, there's something, right? They have a lot of submissions or they have a lot of knockouts, something like that. He doesn't really, 7 knockouts, which is good in 23 fights. Only 1 submission, 9 decisions. He's lost 5 times as well, 3 knockouts and 2 submissions. But he's just a good old-fashioned, well-rounded fighter who gets better in fights, which is, I honestly, I think if there's one asset you could ask for if you were to make a fighter, it'd probably be that. And he has that in abundance. He gets better as the other guys get worse. As they get more tired, as they get worn out. Even if he's the one taking a lot of shots, very, very good. We saw that in the Mike Hamill fight and how he landed that big head kick. But his striking has come on an awful lot, as they were talking about in the commentary in that fight. Good jab, good right hand, and a very, very good fighter fighting out of Team Renegade. But Diakiese, 31 years of age now. This is his first fight after coming over from the UFC. Won his last fight in the UFC, 17-7. A lot of decisions in there as well. But what I want to see here from Diakiese is the old Marc Diakiese. I want to see him going back to the guy who, was double-legging lads and beating the hell out of them on the ground. Landing his big shots, throwing big wheel kicks. I want to see the exciting Marc Diakiese. There was this thing for a while where he was almost out of a job and with the UFC, and he had to kind of win his way back. It happened a couple of times. And I feel like he was fighting to survive rather than fighting to win for a lot of his UFC tenure. And I'll say it again, that's it now. No more of that. No more of that. Go out there and be you, because he's a great fighter. Marc Diakiese has world championship potential. I truly believe that. We've seen it. Look, people probably saying, what are you talking about? People could have said that about Charles Oliveira or Rafael dos Anjos years ago as well, and you would have said the same thing. But I truly believe that. But he needs to go out and do it. He has a vicious right hand, very good ground and pound, very good wrestling. And this is a good fight for him to show it. It really, really, really is. But it's also a good fight for him to lose if he can show it. So, good matchmaking again by Bellator. At the same time, though, this fight makes a little bit more sense. With the Paul Hughes fight coming up, Diakiese and Hughes, they're both said they're going to be in the season next year. Bit risky putting them into these fights, although it doesn't really matter if they take a loss. Who knows? But I'm looking forward to this fight, and definitely one of the ones in this card that I'll be looking out for, probably the most, aside from the Irish guys. And speaking of the Irish guys, let's talk about them, because the two standout undefeated guys on this card. Although just before we get to that, Archie Colgan and Manel Souza are also two standout undefeated guys, 10-0 versus 11-0. Colgan looked very good in his win over Thibaut Gouti last time out. A lot of decisions in there though as well. Souza, as we just talked about not too long ago, beat Tim Wilde in his second fight for PFL/Bellator, and he's a finisher, very, very, very high knockout ratio, young. This is going to be very, very interesting. We know Colgan is a very good wrestler, fighting out the Genesis Training Academy, whereas Souza, the Brazilian, is coming over, and he's going to be looking for those heavy shots. He's going to be looking you know, he fought Mauricio Ruffi, who's a good fighter as well, earlier on in his career. That's going to be a very, very interesting fight to look ahead to. As is, you know, there's two standout. Okay, the two Irish standout ones for me: Derek Kelly and Dmitry Hishrenko. Kelly 6-0, Hishrenko 9-0. You know, the Mobile Mauler Kelly, 26 years of age, has looked good as at all his fights. You know, apart from one, sorry, he had one fight in Clan Wars up the north of Ireland as well. And Hishrenko fought his opponent or his teammate Daniel Skitisi a couple of fights ago, and has looked very good. It's a weird one here, right? So we'll talk about Kieran Clark in a few minutes, but Derek Kelly at 6-0. I think the last time I spoke about him after their fights over in the Severe MMA podcast, I was saying he was the type of guy that maybe at this stage of his career, I don't think he needs a step up, right? I think he needs 3 or 4 more fights to get to a place where maybe you step up. Kieran Clark right now, he needs a step up. He needs to go to the next level. But Dara has been given the step up, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Like, he is a really good athlete, maybe the best of all the young Irish fighters coming through in terms of his athleticism. Gotten, you know, changed around in weight classes over the last while, has come out and look, you know, fantastic in some of his fights. In other of these fights, he comes out and he gets the win, and then he's backstage and he's gone, I could have fought way better than that. I'm ashamed of myself, and that, which I loved. Like, that's show me a guy who's not happy to you know, to win in a kind of a not perfect fashion. I'll show you a winner, and that's exactly what Derek Kelly is. And, you know, as I said, very, very young in his career for this sort of step up, but, you know, if he wins it, it's massive in his career. You know, Kelly's a good striker with a good right hand, but he's more of a wrestler, very strong on the ground, very good at getting on top of you and staying on top of you and mauling you, you know, as the nickname suggests. And he shrink on the other side of it then. You know, he can wrestle and all that as well, but, you know, watching a couple of these fights, it seems to be doing a lot of striking these days. You know, doesn't have massive power. He's a lot of finishes in his career, but a lot of them TKOs and stuff. Look, I think Hishrenko will be trying to win a decision here against Derek Kelly by keeping the fight on the feet and kind of touching him from the outside and not making it much of a fight. He'll want this to be a technical outside matchup, whereas Kelly will want to get inside, take him down, and put the hurt on him. And honestly, I'm not massively sure who's going to win it. I'll lean Derek Kelly. I think that wrestle might be enough. Hishrenko in that Skitisi fight did get taken down once. I watched one of his other fights where he did get taken down as well. I think Kelly's probably a better and stronger wrestler than a lot of those guys. So if that is the case, I think he can absolutely win the fight. But as I said, a massive step up there. Look, it's a massive step up, funny enough, for both guys. Not necessarily Hishrenko. Skitisi and Montalvo are two good fighters, but it is for Kelly, no doubt about it. And then for Kieran Clark, I wouldn't say it's a massive step up for Clark, but I do rate his opponent after watching him now. Like, Kieran Clark 9-0, you know, he's done all he needs to do. 2 finishes in a row now, 4 finishes in his last 5, 6 in his last 7 even in Bellator. He fought all his fights in Bellator. A lot of short notice stuff. As I'm recording this here, I'm not even sure if he's going to fight this lad. He's one of those, as always, people pull out of fights against him. But I would have loved him to see him fight Zabit's brother. I think that would have made a lot of sense. But he's gone in here against Zubinzubi Ruiz. I believe he was supposed to fight before, if I'm not. Or maybe I'm mistaken, but I remember hearing that name before. But anyway, watched a bit of Ruiz, and I describe him as a high volume southpaw, accurate early, but tends to become a tad predictable because a lot of the volume is the same sort of stuff that comes, but he's dangerous at the same time. Good wrestling. I think he's a tad over anxious in a lot of positions. You know, I said earlier about some guys, you know, they're not throwing enough. He almost throws too much. You know, he ends up falling off of positions, and, you know, if he took a breath and took a step back, I think he would be a lot better of a fighter. And I think Kieran Clark, if you're him, you have to pray on that. You know, Kieran is a good striker, but a very good wrestler, and one of those tough as nails guys who, sometimes he isn't able to show his ability because he gets cracked early and it turns into a war, and he invariably has his undefeated record, which always wins that war. Look, if you're to look at Clark in this one, what do you expect him to do? Go in and take Ruiz down and beat him that way? Don't allow him to pressure you with his striking and keep it there. If you can push him back, whether it's with the wrestling or whether it's with your striking, you can win the fight. And I think you will. I think once you take away that pressure game from Ruiz, I don't think there's much substance behind it now. There's a lot of substance in the actual pressure game itself. If you can't deal with it, it's going to be a very, very hard night. But I think Kieran Clark has dealt with better fighters already in his career. But again, a tough matchup, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Elsewhere in the card, there isn't a whole lot, I suppose, to talk about. Mike Shipman, as I mentioned earlier, 16-4 now. He's won his last 2 fights in a row, beating Stephen Hill and Charlie Ward, coming back after fighting just in May not too long ago. And he's taken on Elsam Abdul, who is fighting out of Egypt, and this is his first step up in Bellator. He fought a lot in UAE Warriors and Brave. He actually fought Dan Vinny, who I mentioned earlier on, but he also fought Robin Roos, who fought for the Cage Warriors title only a few weeks ago and looked very, very good in that fight, and he beat him. Lost to Jati Manan, the former Cage Warriors champion, but has beaten Lyed Zerhouni as well, who I've watched a lot of over the years. You've seen him a lot of these fights. Good finisher, a lot of knockouts and submissions in there as well. And the same could be said for Shipman. Look, you'd fancy Shipman in that fight. 34 years of age, maybe one last run kind of in him there. And then you Stephen Hill, who I mentioned earlier on there as well. He's also fighting. That's 175 pounds catch weight. His first loss of his career came to Shipman in his last outing. Before that, he'd all 6 of his 7 fights have been finishes. His opponent, again, the first step up for him here. Very similar record, 8-2. He's been in there with Carlos Prates, who's a very good fighter in the UFC at the moment. A lot of submissions in his arsenal. I think Hill will probably be the big favorite in this one. And then the opening fight of the night, the last one we're going to speak about here, is Imen Al-Mudaf against Dana Silva, who's 3-0. Lady Di, she's coming over from Iron Man. She's first step up again. And Iman is out of England, but she's fought a lot in UAE Warriors and all finishes there in her first 4 fights. So it'd be interesting. Again, a step up for both of them. It'd be interesting to see who comes out on top of that one. So those are the big fights coming up at Bellator over in London. And keep on track here with us at Sherdog.com. We'll bring you all the results, the aftermath, and all the chat around all your biggest mixed martial arts. All right, I will leave it there. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all